Coming up this morning on this final day of Saints training camp, before we take a look at the NFC East, we preview the Saints' second preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers. Both teams are banged up, but the big difference is one is the favorite to win their division and potentially go back to the Super Bowl, and one isn't. You want to guess who that is? Who will play Sunday night? Will there be a different starter at right tackle? Who will go first in the quarterback 2 battle? Is the offense as bad as we think it is? And is the defense as good as we think it is? Also, as we said, we continue our 8-part series on previewing and predicting each division in the NFL. Today, in part 5, we will open our look at the NFC with a 2-horse race in the NFC East. Will it be the New York Giants or the Washington Commanders? Just kidding. But it's no joke that our Friday friend is here. Indeed, Larry Holder, the Athletic, will join us next on the Dattitude podcast.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, New Orleans? And hello to my friends elsewhere, everywhere, out there who have called the New Orleans Saints and asked for a tryout at right tackle. Look, I hope they call you back before the Atlanta Falcons do. Justin Simmons might be a better tackle than... Never mind. We don't have time for insults. We only have time for Dattitude, episode number 267, presented by Evangeline Securities for a Friday. Yes, Friday. Glorious Friday. August the 16th, 2024. I have not offered my services to the Saints. I am happy with my job. And in case you live in the Midwest and stumbled through YouTube and asking, who the hell is this loudmouth with a weird accent? I am Jim Derry. Whether you're watching on one of our NOLA.com social media channels or listening on demand to the podcast, whether you are from the Midwest or the West Coast or New England, or from the greatest place on earth, New Orleans, Louisiana. As always, I welcome you, and I thank you for being part of the Dattitude family, whether this is show number 1 for you or number 267 or somewhere in between. Also, for those newbies out there, I will warn you, if you're looking for nothing but a feel-good, the Saints are going to the playoffs, and everything is going to be okay kind of show, you're probably in the wrong place. We tell it like it is, and that at least the way we think it is. Not that it can't be good. We think it can be good. Not all is bad. It's been a rough couple weeks for this team. You got to admit, it really has been they have done nothing to make us feel like they're going to be better than what our expectations are. And in fact, in some ways, they might even have made us think they're going to be worse. And I think most of our expectations were pretty low to begin with. Texting with a friend of mine this morning who is in this business. I'm not going to mention any names, but someone who is normally fairly positive says, man, this season could be bad. So, but if you listen to some shows, I'm just going to say fanboy shows, some podcast out there, I'm not going to mention any names, because there are some of the guys on some of these shows that are uber positive. One of them in particular is a good friend of mine, but they're trying to spin it positive. I don't think I can't really believe that some of the like uber positivity that I hear, I can't believe they really believe that. This morning I was listening to one of them, man, it was crazy. I mean, look, it is what it is. When I say what we're going to do here on the show, it's because you are all a part of the show, as the regulars know. You can have your voice heard throughout by typing in your comment on YouTube or Facebook. And we ask, if you haven't already done so, we have some great shorts. Look, I try to find as many positive and put on the shorts, the highlight. They're basically highlights of the show, the clips, snippets from the show. Not always. Sometimes I do individual shorts that didn't run in the show, and especially when football season starts, I definitely will. When a game's over, I'll give you my short take. If it's at home, it'll probably be from the floor of the Superdome. But you can be a part of the show, the live show, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. And when the season starts, also Thursday, our betting show. So 3, about to be 4 days a week. And you can type in your comment on Facebook or YouTube, whether you're watching. Subscribe. You can get in touch with me on X at Jim Derry Jr. or via email at jderry@theadvocate.com. We got some regulars here this morning. A-Town, what is going on? Larry will most certainly be with us in just a moment. In fact, he just showed up in the green room, so we're going to have him on in just a minute. Rocky is with us. Philip wants to know if I suck lemons at home. I like lemonade. I make lemonade out of lemons. Philip says the Saints won't be that bad. Maybe they won't. I would be super thrilled to be sitting here. I'm not even going to say as far as December. I'd be super thrilled to sit here in the middle of October after that opening ridiculously rough stretch. And if the Saints are 3-3, I'm going to come out and tell you, dude, you people who were uber positive, you were right. I will gladly do that on this show because I will do it. I'm not going to come back and tell you later on and try to tell you, spin it some kind of way. Well, I said so. No, I'll tell you I was wrong. That's what we do here. Larry Holder, again, about to come on next. I got a couple things. There were 2 things that I wanted to talk about before Larry came on, but I'm going to wait till he comes on. There's one in particular I want to get his opinion on. But before we bring in Larry, expand on the Saints. Again, got a big show today. Lots of things to talk about. You see the 3 headlines on there on the left. Yes, that is not a misprint. The Saints are 1-point favorites, even though they are banged up. And the 49ers are banged up as well. I don't think they're not going to have a lot of starters play. That over-under of 38.5. And I've said this before, don't bet on preseason. Just don't. I mean, if you really say, look, I want $10 on something just to have fun with it, the only suggestion I would have is the same suggestion I always have. Unders hit more often in preseason than overs do. And the under hit on the Saints game last week, I think there's a good chance it hits again. I know 38.5 is low, but if you want to bet on anything, that's my suggestion, to bet on the under 38.5. All right, before we continue, and we're going to talk, obviously, lots of the 3 Saints headlines, maybe a couple other things. NFC East today. Who do we think? Got some interesting talk there because I think Larry and I are pretty much in alignment, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Give me a second to tell you about how our friends at Evangeline Securities can help you figure out the rest of your life. If you own a privately held or family-run business, or if you know someone that fits in that category, there's a good chance you have thought about what your world might be like if you sold your business and moved on from that day-to-day grind and you can just watch reruns of Dattitude all day long. Evangeline's founding and managing partners, Nick Braden and Ron Hemel, can help arm you with the information you need. Decide if that's possible. And if it is, take you to the next step. How do they do that? Well, first and foremost, they will maximize the value for the business by scheduling a complimentary valuation. You might not even have a clue of how much your business is worth. Hey, Johnny, I think you could get like 20 grand for that thing. Maybe 5 million. Who knows? You can rest assured Nick and Ron will find out how much it is, and you can know that they care. They came back to New Orleans after gaining all the experience they need in New York, in the New York City financial world. They came home because they love their people here in Southeast Louisiana. And as good as the food is in New York City, it ain't gumbo. And they certainly don't have red beans on Mondays. They open offices on Poydras Street in Lafayette, and they're here to serve you. We will tell you more before we make our predictions in the NFC East later this afternoon. Well, it's morning now, but it'll be early afternoon probably by the time we get to that, or maybe it's super late morning. Who knows? In the meantime, you can check out our friends at www.evangelinesecurities.com. Okay. I'm not wasting any more time. Well, Rocky said 3-3 yeah, you did. I got to admit. Good morning, Jerry. Thank you for joining us. You know who else is going to join us? You know who it is. It's our Friday friend, our Friday amigo, our Friday compadre, Larry Holder. What is going on? On The Athletic.
I'm here. It's always a party.
You rushed back from Metairie. You look like you got your tennis hat on.
That's exactly. I unexpectedly picked up a match, and I said, I'm not super busy Friday morning before 11 o'clock, so let me go play some singles. Oh my gosh, at 44 years old, and it's 9 a.m. It's still blazing on a tennis court. So yeah, it was.
Yeah. And you're still you're all in one piece. Everything is good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you know me, like this time of the year, you always run into me at your club in Mandeville because I'm playing Labor Day weekend and the weekends leading up to it. I'm always playing state tournaments through USTA. Not this weekend, but I got one next weekend, so it will be a good time.
Well, that leads into a programming note. We're actually going to do after we do the NFC East today. Our next division is coincidentally the Saints playing the San Francisco 49ers, the NFC West. And instead of our regular Friday, we're going to do it live on Wednesday because Larry is not going to be around on Friday. And instead of taping it, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to comment if they want throughout the live show. And so we're going to do that on Wednesday this coming week instead of Friday. I'm sure you'll be okay with it. Before we get to the Saints portion of the show, there was a tweet that really caught my eye that I wanted to throw out at you, and I thought it was interesting. Ben Stevens reports on X, and it was reposted by Tom Casale, our bet.nola.com editor. And it got over 1.1 million views. The repost got more than 1.1 million views, by the way. The Knot reports that Saturday, October the 12th, is one of the five most popular wedding dates in 2024, to which Tom reposted and said, I wouldn't even go to my own wedding on October 12th, 2024. Here are these are just the four big games on that date. Number 2, Ohio State against number 3, Oregon. Number 4, Texas against number 16, Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Number 8, Penn State is taking on number 23, USC. And the big one for us here is number 6, Ole Miss visiting Tiger Stadium, and number 13, LSU. My question to you and the listeners and viewers out there, if your best friend was getting married on October the 12th, 2024, what would you do?
I'm the wrong person to ask because
I know what you would do.
I'm off on Saturdays, so I work Sundays. So as long as the wedding's not on Sunday, I'm good.
Yeah.
Wrong person to ask, my friend.
I
got married March 28th, as you would assume, by design, outside of football season, even though that does every year when I was really traveling and doing everything, I would have to go out of town every year because that would be the league owners meetings. So,
yeah.
But hey, it's you make up for it afterwards. You know, it's okay. But hey, so I'm the exception. But that schedule alone is a problem.
It really is
the most popular wedding date of the year.
I'm not as much of a college football guy as I am an NFL guy. Obviously, I mean that's where we get most of our views from. That's what people mostly want to hear. We do once the season starts, we will talk obviously a lot more about LSU and to some degree Tulane. And we will have graphics for LSU and Tulane as we do. But I will say this. My best friend, whom you know, Mike Prange, got married. I was the best man, so I had no choice. I had to go. He got married during the Bluegrass Miracle. And we were walking out of the church. And before we went in the church.
So that was like a mid-afternoon, like early afternoon Saturday wedding. I was still in college. I remember exactly where I was because – shocking to most, I went almost streaking after that, running down the street in Tigerland. I think I was just in underwear, but I wasn't completely naked. Just saying.
Well, thanks for giving me those images. I'm almost ready to give the second Evangeline ad and say goodbye to everybody. But we want. Brian says send constant score updates. Well, back then in 2002. I didn't even know how to text. I don't think anyone was texting me. I think text was a thing, maybe. I don't know, but I certainly didn't know how to. So I was calling my friends at the bar who were giving me updates, and we literally walk out down the aisle, and I call my friend, Drew, and ask him what's going on. He says, LSU's about to lose. They just gave up a field goal. And he goes, hold on a second. They're going to run one play here. Hang on. Oh, they got like a 15-yard pass. It's over. They got like 6 seconds left, and they got one play, and they're on their own 18 or something. next thing I know, you hear the place erupt. I mean, erupt. And I turned to Mike and I said, "You son of a bitch. I don't know what you made me miss, but you made me miss something." A-Town says he got married on the day that the Brightfield hit the Riverwalk. I don't remember that. Should I know that? I mean, I'm a New Orleanian. I should know that, I guess. But
when the ship hit the Riverwalk, that was bad.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I do remember. Okay, I know what you're talking
Yes.
about now. Yeah. Ooh, yikes. I'd rather miss a football game, I guess, than that. Philip says if he's a real friend, he would consider other people's. That's what I said. You know, I got married on a Mardi Gras float. So obviously in February, I got married on a Mardi Gras float. You don't get married during football season. If you do, you get married on a Wednesday. We're going to go to the Justice of the Peace. That's my opinion. So, but my wife already knows. She doesn't even ask me to go to a birthday party, or I mean, I can't now because I'm working anyway. But she doesn't ask me to go to a birthday party or anything on a Sunday. She just takes the girl and says, "We're going to such and such. Have fun." So.
It's funny. Since I'm not covering it anymore. Once I switched from really a Southeast Louisiana columnist role to national NFL role, because I got to cover LSU's run of Joe Burrow like that, and that was really my last. I covered a little bit in 2020, but kind of phased it up. But yeah, that was my last run of covering it. So I actually look at Saturdays and I go enjoy it. And if I watch a game, I watch it. If I don't, I don't.
That's kind of where I am.
It doesn't bother me because I know Sundays. If people don't know what I do on Sundays, they're probably like, "Larry, what do you do?" Like I manage our news coverage league wide on Sundays, so it is a chaotic day that you don't know what you did 30 minutes ago. Because things are going on all over the league. And so it is high flying. Like once I don't do Sunday night football. So once basically the late afternoon games end and we're done, it's just like, oh, what just happened? Like I don't even remember the day.
Dre gets mad at me sometimes because I told her years ago, I don't care as much about LSU. If we're doing something, we'll go. But this is before I was doing this. And so now it's kind of like, I mean, if LSU's playing Nichols or something, we can go off and go to dinner or something. But if LSU's playing Ole Miss, I want to watch it anyway, but I really have to watch it now. So
I'm typically watching.
Saturday's my only day off as well during football season. So it is.
Well, I get Fridays because you do the preps, and so I'm fortunate to get Fridays. So guess what? In season, I do this on my off day, Jim Derry.
I know you do.
Just remember.
No. Larry Holder, the Athletic, is a big friend of this show. He comes on here. He really does it because he wants me to make trades with him during the baseball season.
It's worked. Hey.
Yeah, it has.
It's working right now.
Saints / well, I guess this isn't really Saints news, but it affects the Saints. Big story since we were on last on Wednesday. Justin Simmons to the Falcons. Matthew Judon to the Falcons. Their average defense just became a lot better. Before I ask you about that, I will say this. Look, we already knew the Falcons were good. But if you don't think they're the clear-cut favorite, I think you're kidding yourself. They're odds-wise, they're still only minus 130 at DraftKings, which is a bargain. They're minus 135 and higher at most other places. They're minus 121 at Bet Rivers. I don't really use that often, but minus 130 DraftKings. I think that is a huge bargain. Before last season, when the Bucs won with a preseason odds of plus 700, the favorite had won the NFC South 4 seasons in a row with odds of minus 120 or worse. And the previous team with plus odds before the Bucs last season to win the NFC South with the 2018 Saints at plus 120 and the 2017 Saints, which won it at plus 600. But that's when they were coming off of 3 straight 7-9 seasons. Look, I already thought that the Falcons were clearly the favorite. We're going to talk about the NFC South in a few weeks, but I think this only enforces that now.
Well, I didn't need Justin Simmons to join the Falcons to even make it even more clear-cut. I mean, Matthew Judon he's a difference maker.
No doubt.
He's one of the better pass pressure players in the league in the last several years, and he's kind of gotten hidden because the Patriots have kind of gone downhill. But he is a force, and the Falcons needed it desperately. And it's funny because the Bears offered a 3rd-round pick. The Falcons offered a 3rd-round pick. and the Patriots decided to make the deal with the Falcons. And so, look, the Falcons really had no pass rush. Like, they had no
Yeah.
notable names there. They needed to make something happen. And I'm actually kind of surprised the Patriots couldn't squeeze more out of the Falcons, because they were in a pretty desperate
Yeah,
spot.
3rd round pick. Yeah, I thought that
Yeah.
was in.
So here's the thing: it's a rental. Like, he doesn't have a contract going forward. Simmons is a 1-year deal, so it's almost like they're banking on, hey, let's win big now with Cousins, and let's go get some of these veteran guys. And so, yeah, I think the Falcons, they were the favorite, whether they did this or not. Now they've kind of distanced themselves, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to win 12 games, but still they're the favorite. And also, oh, by the way, the Simmons is a direct shot at the Saints, because we know the Saints were interested. The Falcons got him, and now the Saints are looking just to see who's going to win that free safety job. And so, okay, great. So that's just another kick in the gut for the Saints.
I know a lot of people are upset about not Justin Simmons, especially again because he went to Atlanta. But look, Saints have bigger needs. Whether they save that money and choose to spend it wisely or not, I don't know if that will be the case or not. But the fact that they can, I mean, to me, it's another form of kick in the can. We talk about, I use it at least once every other week, the kick in the can. To me, that's what Justin Simmons would be. Kick in a can. As Rocky said, now we can still spend money on the O-line. He's trying to, I know we've already talked about Bakhtiari, and Larry says that Bakhtiari is not going to want to come here. So Brian
he'd be here already. Like, if he'd be here already.
I don't disagree. Brian said 1-6 start the season. Well, I don't think they're going to go 1-6 because they play the Broncos in week 7, and I think the Saints will win that game.
What? And Bo Nix you don't trust? Come on.
No, I don't.
Come on.
Not at all. But anyway, I think the Justin Simmons non-signing of the Saints, I think him going to Atlanta is actually, I know there will be many people who think this is weird, but I think it's actually a positive, the Saints. Gabe says Spencer Rattler will lift the Lombardi in the Dome and then turn off his PlayStation.
For which team and what year?
Yeah, that's kind of rude, man. All right, before we get to who might play Sunday, Larry, for the Saints, again, Sunday night, 7 p.m. on Fox, let's talk about who either isn't going to play or at least who didn't practice. And we saw on our front page slide that 13 players were DNPs on Thursday's practice. Today's the last day of training camp, Thursday. And I'm going to give you the list of names in just a minute. But beyond the 13 players who were DNPs, maybe bigger news is Taliesin Fawanga left with an apparent back injury. Much lesser news, 7th round pick tackle Joseph Aziram also had to leave. Man, and you're talking about another starting offensive lineman, issues everywhere. That's just too many. I don't understand all these injuries.
Well, Fawanga, I don't play him till you have to. I mean, there's no reason to do it. It's trial by fire for sure when you get to week 1. But I mean, you're playing him regardless. You need him. There's no point in overexerting or doing anything wild and crazy with him. And he's not the one you're actually concerned about in terms of level of play. And I know it's nonstop, right tackle, left guard, right tackle, left guard. Everyone's concerned about it. Everyone's rightfully concerned about it. And I don't know how extensive the 49ers are going to deploy their players, but still, you're playing the 49ers. Even their number 2s are probably pretty decent. And so if you're seeing struggles there on the offensive line, it's just going to be the same old story. It's like we have not seen anything that's overly encouraging. And so where do you go? I mean, and you talk about spending money. Okay, you have this money to spend. It's the same list of names since last time we talked a week ago, and they're all damaged goods or not good enough. So what do you do?
But they still might be better than – not might be. I mean, I don't really even need to know who the names are going to be cut. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not purposefully being negative. I'm telling you what I see. I think there are going to be multiple names on the cut list that are going to be better than what you have right now.
Maybe, but if they're not good enough to even make a team,
maybe you do. You grade
on
play.
the twos.
You write articles all the time. You write articles in the Athletic all the time, and your main thing is you go through and do grades and list rankings of players and units. I was reading your story post about the defensive backfields last week, and you do that. This is what you do. So you're telling me you don't think someone out there that's going to get cut is better than the right tackle that they have right now?
I mean, they could be, but it's not like someone's coming in to save the day and they're, he fixes the problem. Like he doesn't. Whoever comes in does not fix the problem. I mean, it's there. He's obviously.
Sometimes though, you just put a little. When you got a leak in a tire, you're going to have to replace the tire eventually. But you can go to the shop and get them put a plug in it. That plug's not going to last more than a few months. You're going to have to replace that tire, but at least you can save some money until you can afford to fix the damn tire. But and maybe that's what they need right now, just to be serviceable.
Look, I'm actually in the midst, and I've had to run in some things work wise, but I'm in the midst of doing an offensive line outlook, so it's actually really good timing here. But all I know is you can look across the league, and look, there probably aren't 64 tackles that you say, oh my gosh, these guys are NFL starters.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
They're less. It's just like quarterbacks. You have fewer starters, and sometimes you just got to go with what you got. And I'll be honest, I haven't looked at depth across the league at other teams. I was just looking at, okay, who are these starter five? Are teams in good shape? And I could just, shocker, the Saints are not in good shape compared to the rest of the league. I mean, that's just what it is, especially with Penning. I mean, there's
got to be somebody's got to be in a situation. And if you think about where the Saints were, a lot of people are still upset. I actually think it was the right thing to do. But when the Saints got rid of C.J. Gardner-Johnson and sent him to Philly, and so that was a quality player that went somewhere else, and it ended up being the right thing for the Saints, I think, again. But regardless whether it was or wasn't, they had an expendability there. I think a team, and you could look at, we're going to talk about the Eagles in a little bit. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They might be paying a lot of money, and I don't know this. I'm just saying there's going to be a team out there somewhere with a solid offensive line that says, you know what, I don't want to pay this kind of money for a backup, or maybe somebody's disgruntled, a tackle is disgruntled, and he thinks she should be a starter. There's got to be someone out there, and I would think that they're out there scouring what might be available soon, or at least calling people and say, is this available for a trade?
That happens a lot less with offensive linemen because, like I said, you don't have enough quality across the league for teams to afford to do that. And so that's part of the problem you're running into here. Like that, this position is, it's like you don't have enough of them that are good enough. So that's where the Saints are. And I don't know. I'm not someone who's thinking, oh my gosh, if that's going to be the case. And if an offensive lineman of any kind of notoriety is cut or let go, there's a reason for it. Like that.
Yeah, but there's a reason why the Saints would want to take a chance on someone like that too.
Oh, I'm not saying that they won't. I'm just saying that if you are looking for a solution that is not in the building right now, you're in a heap, and that's just a fact. Like
speaking of the Eagles,
if you were in a problem spot at corner, I'd have a different outlook because there's still viable people, in my opinion, out there that can play.
Speaking of the Eagles and former Eagles, Gabe asked if Hassan Reddick can play offensive line. Probably.
Well, he doesn't want to go to the Jets. He's just hanging out. Oh my gosh. At least the Jets, like here's the thing with them. They let Bryce Huff walk. The Eagles picked him up, and then the Eagles, they let Reddick go to the Jets. So basically the Eagles got a younger version of Reddick, paid him more because he's an ascending player, right. Got rid of the headache, and now the Jets don't have the young good player and have a headache with Reddick.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. It really is. Rocky says he thinks Udo gets the start at right tackle. I actually think that when all is said and done, I think Ali Udo is going to be your starting right tackle as well.
Okay, I've I've known that name because I've done the research on offensive line throughout the years, and I'm going to look it up right now. I've got my.
This is why we have Larry
metrics.
Holder, the Athletic, on here. He does all the research on these players. Go ahead.
All right. His pressure percentage allowed last year was minimal. He didn't play enough snaps.
He didn't play a lot last year.
All right, so the last time he was a starter in the league,
21.
21.
Yeah.
His pressure percentage was 6.9. That is, and I'm curious. And he only gave up 1 sack, gave up 43 pressures. I don't know where that is in relation to which position he was playing. But if that rate is at tackle, I will say it's better than Penning's rate.
There's no question.
So
I would bet a mortgage payment that Penning will give up more than 1 sack this year. Gabe had posted this. Brian says, Larry, when your right tackle is 100th best, maybe the 80th best comes as a free upgrade. I don't know.
Numbers-wise, Udo is better, but he hasn't played – he only played 2 games last year. So yeah.
Well, and for those who haven't heard me say this on the show before, you also have to remember with Udo that the 1 year 21 that he actually started almost the entire season, the only year in his career that he actually started nearly an entire season was when Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings. So
probably a reason why the Saints signed him.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on, look, here's the list of the players. I said I would read this out, and I did it last week, and I think it's worth mentioning again. Besides the 2 that we mentioned that left practice, here are the 13 players that did not participate in Thursday's practice. Amadi, the safety, groin injury. A.T. Perry with an ankle injury, that's a problem. There was talk the other day that they think he'll be back for the regular season. When they say that, that's not good. Pete Werner still not back with his shoulder issue. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, they think he'll be back for the regular season. Hip flexor. Kendra Miller, there's no word on Kendra Miller. I'm just convinced they're going to put him on IR. I know a lot of people talking about cutting him. There's no reason to cut him. You can put him on IR, and you can make a decision in a few weeks. Paulson Adebo, safety Millard Bradford, cornerback Mac McCain, linebacker Isaiah Stalbert, who got hurt in last week's game. Nick Saldiveri still not in there. Trajan Jeff Cote, who's been out for a while. Wide receiver Mason Tipton, who we thought remember a couple weeks ago, this guy's a shoo-in to make the team. Yeah, no. And then tight end Michael Jacobson. So not all of them are key names, and there are quite a few on that list that I just mentioned they aren't going to make the team. But there are some big names as well. And when you got 13 injuries, 13 DNPs at this point of the season, to me, that is a big deal.
Well, it depends on the names, and obviously that's a lot. But also, I think that kind of goes across the league when you're looking at teams. The 49ers were so beat up they couldn't even do practice.
Yeah, right.
With the
Saints. Which is why the Saints are a 1-point favorite, by the way.
Well, that makes some sense. And so, yeah, it's not optimal because you don't want your starters playing if they don't have to be playing at this point. And so, yeah, I'm not one to kind of overly panic about something like this.
You never do.
Yeah. I try to keep an even keel here. I try to keep one. So, but yeah, it kind of is what it is. I'm not going to overly panic, and I'll just as we're going. I'm now you're making me do a rabbit hole live. I'm going to go look where those snaps came for Udo in 2021. And where he stacked up, I'm looking. I'm trying to multitask.
Look, and let me ask you this question: Is what it is very similar? He's doing fine.
No, I don't.
Fine.
It's fine.
Remember what Sean Payton would say? Oh, he's doing okay. He's fine. He's fine. Brandon Browner. He's fine.
I know all this. Okay. So I've done the research on Udo. Okay.
There you go.
So his snaps came primarily at right guard.
Okay. So I didn't realize that.
Let's see. He had 547 pass block snaps at right guard, 882 offensive snaps at right guard. and his pressure percentage at guard was 6.6%, I could tell you that's not good.
Okay. Well,
that is not.
Yeah, no, when you said the number at first, I knew that wasn't that great of a number, but still.
It's not good. Yeah, comparable. It's like your guards, I'll say the average, this is average, is 5%. So he's well below average of what you want, and that's at guard. It's not.
What was Penning last year? Because he did play in a fair amount of games. He probably had. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head. I have not looked.
7.8%. He was out of 38.
What do you have? 300 snaps.
7.8% pressure percentage out of 38 qualified. He ranked 30th. Not good.
That's not good. It's not as bad as I thought.
But that's just at right tackle. That is at right tackle. 30th at right tackle.
Like I said, the one thing, and we're going to move
wherever he played, whichever one he played at the most. But 30th out of 38, not good. Like that's
all right.
Worst in the league of a starter.
I'm not going to keep beating this dead horse because we all no seriously. I mean, but it is the number one. It's even more. It's certainly more important than who the QB2 is, in my opinion. It's certainly a more important story. It's the most important story right now, in my opinion. Who's going to do it? So I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I just don't think that. I think he's lost whatever confidence he had left. I was hoping he would. I really did. I was hoping he would come. I'm like, okay, you're moving over to a different spot. You got a fresh start, a new lease on life. But everything I heard in the first week or so of camp is that he looked a lot better. And then something happened in camp, and I don't know if it was because Chase Young was obliterating him or what, but he took a turn for the worse and looked awful in that preseason game. And again, it's only a quarter and a half, so he'll certainly get a chance. I think he'll probably start this preseason game, but if he looks like he looked again, I think that's the end. I don't think you can keep doing this. I think this is his last chance. And again, you don't want to say last chances in preseason, but I think this is his last chance. So we'll find out.
Yeah, look, you got 2 years of this where he was hurt and then ineffective, and he gets benched. And yeah. I mean, but look, this is the position that they're in. I mean, they knew that they were going to be in a heap. Obviously, here's the thing: if Ryan Ramczyk could have played, they'd have been okay.
Yeah,
then you
right.
Draft Tuaga, then you feel a lot better, and then you're like,
but they knew months ago, Larry. They knew months ago. This isn't something that happened in the beginning of camp or even in mini camp. They knew months ago. They knew probably at the end of last season, or at minimum, they knew in February that Ramczyk wasn't playing this year. We've been talking about it on this show for months that Ramczyk wasn't going to play this year, even before they made it official. So
you can't make James Hurst unretire.
They might. That is absolute. We talked about. I think I talked about it on Final Bet yesterday. It's a possibility.
He's a better option there.
There's no doubt.
He is.
And I don't care if he's been eating pizza for the last 3 weeks.
Right.
Like seriously, get him in a building if that's what it takes. Do whatever it takes to get him in a building. Okay, look, we really got to get to the preview. So real quickly, we've talked about this so much this week. The time, I think at this point, because they didn't have those joint practices, I think and you tell me if you agree. I know you don't follow the Saints as closely as you did, obviously, when you cover them every day. But I think most likely you'll see Derek Carr play a couple series like he did last week because they didn't have the joint practices. I think you'll probably see Spencer Rattler in the role that Jake Haener played last week, and that's come in like middle to end of first quarter, play throughout the second quarter, and then Haener plays the entire second half. Is that the way you would think you would see this weekend?
That would make sense to me. I feel like because of the lack of the joint practices, like if they had joint practices, I don't think Carr would play. I don't think the first team offense would play. Outside now, the offensive linemen, they probably would. A couple of them, but no, I think you have to play them, and it's new offense. You need to get that out there. Like I think that's a good thing. Like preseason,
they still haven't even installed the whole thing. From what
preseason
I'm reading.
Game 3, I wouldn't expect Carr and all those guys to play. But yeah, I think this one they should. I'd be if I were a Saints fan, I'd be a little disappointed because I think you want to see, and I think the players want to have the reps together within this against another opponent, new offense. Like I think you want that.
Yeah. And I think next week, look, just a heads up for the regulars who come here every show, and we have plenty of you. I think next week, barring something crazy that happens in this preseason game, we're probably not going to talk a whole lot about Rattler and Haener next week. We will in the last week, excuse me, after the last week of preseason, leading up and before the final decisions made and cut down day and all that stuff. But we've talked so much about Haener and Rattler. I just don't want to spend that much more time on it right now. We got so much to talk about. All right. Lastly, real quick, because I promised this is on the storylines, it's in there. Chase Young's been outstanding. We've talked about him. The defense as a whole has looked really good in camp. Do we think they're as good as they've been advertised so far?
Well, we're not going to learn that this game. We're not going to learn that final preseason game. I do feel like, though, that this defense, if Chase Young can play like he has been,
yeah,
he's an upgrade. And I haven't been covering every day, but am I wrong in seeing that Cam Jordan, they've been shifting him inside?
Yeah, he's been playing kind of mixing it up. He's been playing.
That's necessary. I think
next
that's
to Chase Young.
I think that's good because
I
don't trust the interior too much with the Saints pass rush. So at least if you put him in there, he's still of your best four in a pass rushing situation. He's still one of the best four. You play him.
I agree.
Probably next to Brzee. So go. So I like that. I like that scenario. That's smart. So linebacker, I think they're in a good spot. I mean, everybody's okay, healthy. They're in a good spot. Secondary wise, I don't really care what Lattimore's doing. I like their secondary regardless.
We'll see. It's
safety is a bit of a hole. Yeah. I still like their secondary regardless. They played well without him last year. They're still going to play well without him. They're good.
Lastly, like I said, you did that. You did that piece last week on the secondary. Where do you think the Saints secondary ranks among? And I don't need a specific number, but among other teams in the NFC, where do you think that they rank?
Yeah, I look solely at corner just because I hate using pass coverage metrics with a safety unless they're taking slot corner snaps.
Okay.
So I did solely corner. The Saints are one of the best in the league. I mean, depth wise, look, they got. If Lattimore can play, okay, but if not. I like everybody that they got. I haven't I don't have eyes on Kool-Aid McKinstry like the beat writers do anymore. But from everything I've read, it seems like he's been doing well. And look, Adebo is one of the budding top corners in the league. I like where Alontae Taylor, so any of that mix and match. And if Lattimore plays, I assume he's going to get on the field and play at some point. Yeah. They're core group 1 through 4 stacks up well with any foursome in the NFL. So that to me is a big time strength.
I agree. And I think that it's not overhyped, and I think that they're fired up, and I agree with everything you said. And I really think the defense can be much better than they were last year. Now, remember, I've said this before in this show. Basically, when you look at rankings, the offense and defense were basically ranked the same. When you talk about yards and the way I know a lot of people like to use yards per play now. That's like the big thing now, but it's always been yards per game for me. And yards per game wise, the defense and the offense were pretty much what and what last year. So everybody that's like, the offense is horrible. They were horrible. They were trash. Derek Carr sucks. Well,
they weren't horrible.
They weren't horrible at all.
Especially, the back end of the season, late in the season, certainly helped bump those numbers.
There's no doubt.
That's just reality.
But that's because it's not like they were out of the playoff race and just
they got better.
Just threw caution to the wind. They're like, who cares? No, they were like in the playoff race till week 18. So
if this Saints team can score 20 points a game, they will be in, I feel like, in a good spot. I don't know off the top of my head what they averaged last year. Maybe I'm underselling that. Now I'm going to go look because
I know that the last, I think 6 or 7 games, their lowest scoring game was, I think they had one game in the teens, but they were at 22 or higher almost the whole last half of the year. The first half of the year, I think they had 5 or 6 games in the teens. So it is what it is. All right.
Yeah.
Time to move on. We got to do our previews here. We are running over, but I told Larry in a text.
We always run over.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right. This is the portion. We're moving on our NFC East preview. And this is the portion of the show of the preview where I show you what I did last year, making in my predictions. And last week, when we talked about the AFC South, I made a giant ass of myself because I was awful. This week, is a little bit different. I get to redeem myself because I don't know. I don't get a lot of chances to brag, but let's just put them up there. Not only did now you can inverse the last two teams there. Not that that's a big deal, but not only did I get 1 and 2 right, I got their exact records
Look at
right.
the records. I'm looking at that. I was like, did he just copy and paste or what?
I got their exact records right, and actually, you can flip flop I even got the Giants and Commanders records right in inverse order. I said 6-11, 4-13. There was 6-11 and 4-13. I just put the teams in the wrong spot. Who cares? Once you get past 8-9, who gives a damn? But anyway, so I can take a little victory lap as that little eagle sticks out over my face.
Trying to peck me.
Yeah, it's trying to peck you. I'm getting the back end of it. But anyway, so
you're getting the eagle poop.
Yeah, well. All right, let's talk. We go in alphabetical order by city name. So this is not in the order that we think they're going to be. We'll give you our predictions at the end of this. We first start with our team preview. And the first team alphabetically is the Dallas Cowboys. And they were 12-5 last year. I think they've won 11 or more in 3 straight years. And still, Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat because Jerry Jones is a wackadoodle. I don't know how anyone would want to work for that team. But anyway, that being said, I think this team, and I'm not trying to give you a prediction yet, but when you talk about your running back situation that consists of Ezekiel Elliott, Enrico Dowdell, you have, according to PFF, the 32nd ranked running back group. And for a reason. I think they're going to have struggle running the ball. It's not like Dak at this age is going to be running all over the place. Not that he wants to run anyway. And CeeDee Lamb is holding out. I think this offense, which was 5th in the league last year and 14th in rushing, no way they come close to that this year. I think that, you want to talk about the Saints. They got issues.
The running back position is a problem. I don't think there's any question. Even if they would have stood pat last year and brought back Tony Pollard, but there's no way. Like Tony Pollard, there's a reason why as soon as they franchise tagged him, he's like, "Give me the pen, sign it, go. I'll never do this. I'll never make this kind of money again." And smartly, there's a reason why they didn't sign him to a long-term deal. But still, like they got a problem at running the football. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. Offensive line wise, they have definitely moved on. They moved on at center.
Yep.
Tyron Smith is now a New York Jet, and they're going to be starting a rookie left tackle more than likely.
Chuma.
Yeah. So that some of their pieces are in terms of running the football, maybe protecting Dak. And all the conversation all offseason has been more about paying Dak, paying CeeDee Lamb, paying Micah Parsons. How are you going to do that? And so, yeah, it's something that all of those guys are going to get paid at some point, but you're already seeing some attrition offensively along the offensive line, which for a lot of years they were stout, and now they're not as stout as they were. And they haven't taken advantage of that. So that's definitely, that phase is certainly something that will put more pressure on Dak to perform as if there's not already enough for him to perform already.
I think the CeeDee Lamb issue is bigger than anyone's talking about. I know it's been talked about. I don't think it's being talked about enough. I mean, we're now 2 weeks away.
I see it way too much, but that's because I zero in on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm tired of every time there's a press conference, someone's asking about CeeDee Lamb, and every time there's something with Dak negotiations, it's the beat. The drum is being beat. I can promise you.
Well, they need to beat it.
But Dak is not holding out. That's
whenever your owner who has to retract his statement saying basically it's not that big of a deal. I mean, come on, dude. You need to check yourself. So anyway, I think this offense takes a step back. I don't think there's any way they finish 5th in the league again.
Look, Dak Prescott was the favorite to win the MVP and within the last 4 weeks of the season.
Trust me, I know. I had a ticket on him at plus 1,700, and I was it was
legit.
Off.
Like he legitimately deserved that designation for a little bit of time, but then he fell off. Like I said, we've talked about it before. Like people were up and then fell off, and Lamar Jackson outlasted them, and that's why he got it.
I'm a little bitter. That's okay. On the other side of the ball, now there's no reason to me why I don't think their defensive numbers actually could even be better, especially against the run. Look, they have one of the better defensive lines in football. DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons are just beasts. If they stay healthy there, maybe their linebackers need a little bit of work, but I don't know. I think this defense is one of the better defenses in football. Obviously, they finished 5th in the NFL last year, but they're going to need their defense more than ever, especially with, I think the Eagles take a step up with the issues that they have. And then I think the Commanders offensively are going to be much better, not just because of Jaden Daniels. So I think, and you look at some of the teams they have to play this year, they're going to have to be better defensively, and I think they will be.
Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn here. I don't know if they're going to be as good defensively.
Okay.
They fell off the planet against the Packers, like off the planet.
They did.
And they lost a couple of key lesser-named defensive linemen through free agency. They went and they left to go play in Washington with Dan Quinn. Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler, both players had significant pass pressure percentages. Like, it's not just Micah Parsons. He had help, and those two guys helped. And then you look in training camp, they were going to lean on Sam Williams to kind of take over some of that heat. He's out for the year. So they are not super deep. And look, Mazzie Smith, their first rounder from last year, not a big pass pressure player. He's someone you're going to use against the run. So I say all that, and yet you look defensively, they're also getting Trayvon Diggs back.
Of course.
That helps, and that will help your secondary and to play alongside, Bland, who crazy, incredible season. He was playing well already opposite him, but alone had a monster season last year. So it can't be all on Micah Parsons. It's not going to be all on DeMarcus Lawrence. And so it's, big names, but behind them, they've lost some quality depth there.
I try to copy edit my stuff, and I haven't made a mistake on this stuff until now, but I see that I forgot to take some of those ats off. Obviously, the Cowboys do not go on the road from November 24th through the end of the season, but briefly, we'll talk about the schedule, and I'll tell you what is right. With 28th, November 28th, December 9th, they're home for the Giants and Bengals. They're home for the Bucks, and then they finish the season at home against the Commanders. So, but this schedule is a mixed bag. I see it kind of average, kind of a schedule. It starts out easy, I don't want to say easy, but I think they can beat the Browns and Saints. Obviously, toughens up against the Ravens, Giants, Steelers. Before they get to that gauntlet of Lions, then their bye week. 49ers, they got a good spot for the bye week. Falcons are tough, so you could argue that 5-week stretch is kind of going to define their season. Lions bye week, 6 weeks really. Lions bye week, 49ers, Falcons, Eagles, and Texans. To me, if they come out of there 2-3 or even 3-2, then they can contend again for the NFC East title.
Oh, they could certainly contend. I don't think there's any question. Like, that's the thing. They are even on a bigger level. I mentioned that when we did the AFC East, Miami Dolphins. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat. They lose to the teams that they're the playoff caliber teams. Dallas was at least beating some playoff caliber teams. So but then you get into postseason, and it is what it is. Like, it doesn't matter what happens in the regular season. They could go 16-1. They better win some games in the playoffs, or it doesn't matter. Like, that's where they are now.
Yeah, and I think look, I don't. The hate for Mike McCarthy is kind of insane. It was funny because I guess after a while, when you're used to winning, if you're not taking that next step, I get it. But I mean, man, they got to find a way to win in the playoffs. But I don't understand why Mike McCarthy is continually on the hot seat. By the way, the odds by DraftKings, we haven't talked about them. Over under win total 10. Okay, that's about right. Division title plus 160. There's no numbers on here that I'd love to bet. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, I can't see my graphic. They're plus 700 to win the NFC and plus 1,900 to win the Super Bowl. None of those numbers I'm interested in playing right now, not to give too many spoiler alerts. All right, let's not spend a whole lot of time on the New York Giants because I think, look, I love Brian Daboll. I think he's going to be a good coach. I don't know whether it's going to be with the Giants or someone else, but again, not trying to give too much away here, but they were 29th in the league in offense last year. They were 27th in defense. Their running game got significantly worse with the loss of Saquon Barkley. Their wide receiving core isn't good. Their offensive line is one of the worst in football. And their defense is maybe a little bit better than they were last year. They get Brian Burns, but I don't know. I think this it could be a really rough season for the Giants.
They could have the number 1 pick in the draft.
They could.
Like, I don't remember my predictions, and
you'll see it in just a minute.
So yeah, I'm sure if it's something I don't like, but I could see the Giants losing every game. Like I don't trust them at all. I don't trust Daniel Jones, and Brian Burns. It's like, hooray, we got him, and yet he's coming off of not his best season. Obviously, the circumstances were bad, so maybe their best players on their team are, say, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Bobby Okereke, and and then Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, and he's got big sack numbers. His pressure numbers a little lower, but look, if you're getting sacks, obviously that's a plus. But offensively, I mean, I know there's some excitement about Malik Neighbors. We've seen him play. We know he can play. But gosh, I mean, Drew Lock might be the quarterback by the end of the year.
He might be. And I actually think Daniel Jones could be okay. But again, this is a situation in a way, it's kind of like Derek Carr. He doesn't have an offensive line. I mean, and you look, I don't care. They don't nearly have the talent I don't think the Saints have. And I look, Devon Singletary is your running back. The second running back is Tyrone Tracy. Look, this team's a mess. Real quick, their odds over under win total 6.5. Maybe you might think that's a value to go under there. Division title, don't even think about it, plus 2,000. Conference titles plus 7,000, and they're 150 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Don't waste your money. Gabe says they're the second lowest odds to win their respective division, behind only the Patriots at plus 2,500. They're not going to win this division, and it's going to be a rough year, and it might be, the end of the line for Brian Dable. Schedule, not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. They have 3 of their first 5 games on the road. They play the Vikings. At least that's a game, at least they have 2 games that if they're going to win games, those are 2 winnable games. The Vikings having so many, they had maybe the worst week of training camp for any team this week with the loss of J.J. McCarthy. Then they go to Washington, and then they run through a series of games that they're going to lose at Browns, Cowboys, at Seahawks, Bengals, Eagles, at Steelers. It's just going to be a long year. So let's move on. I know
if the Giants didn't have all kinds of other problems, they'd be screaming from the rooftops about Evan Neal. He's been bad. What was he, a top 10 pick? And he's
number 6, I think.
And he's been awful. And he's not. You wouldn't even expect him to start right now. And
that's a bigger disappointment than Trevor Penning because he was drafted so high.
Yes,
he was supposed to be so good. So look, Giants, sorry, it ain't happening. We're moving on. All right, now to a team that obviously not only I think has a chance to win the division and maybe is the favorite. And if you look at their numbers, they are the favorite, minus 120 to win the NFC East. But I think this is a team that could, and I'm not saying they are, I'm saying could go to the Super Bowl. You talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and what they do. Jalen Hurts has turned into just a phenomenal quarterback. In my opinion, they get Saquon Barkley from the Eagles. They have one of the top 3, 4, or 5 running receiver cores, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Paris Campbell, I think, is a great number 3. They got a solid tight end, Dallas Cowboys, and they have maybe the best offensive line or one of the 2 or 3 best offensive lines in football.
I mean, you lose Kelsey. That's I'm curious to see how that helps or hinders what they do. But I really like Barkley with this team. I mean, the fact that he's not the primary weapon, I mean, they could do some damage there. Look, DeAndre Swift is not on the same talent level as Saquon Barkley, and Swift played very well. So Barkley, man, I think he can come in and really be good. But look, you can't erase the stink of the end of last year. I mean, that's true. That was so bad. They had to clean house, with some of their coordinators, and it put Nick Sirianni on the hot seat. And these guys coming off of almost winning the Super Bowl, and a year later they were incredible, and all of a sudden they fall off the map at the end. And I mean, the Bucs beat the snot out of them in the playoffs. I mean, it's like they just quit. The team quit. And so I think there's internally, like, they got to get over that. Now, if you look at defense, that became a huge problem at the end of the last year. I mentioned how they're the ones who have Bryce Huff now, not Hassan Reddick. I think that's an upgrade. Devin White is now their middle linebacker. He's kind of fallen off. I'm wondering to see if he can kind of resurge his career. They've had to shake it up at cornerback. James Bradbury was their starter 2 years ago. He played terrible last year. They had to draft Quinion Mitchell. He's now their number one corner opposite Darius Slay. So they've had to do a lot of moving parts on their defense. Fletcher Cox is gone. So they got some questions there. But
they got CD Deuce.
He's still around. But offensively, I think their offensive line could still be one of the better units, like you mentioned. And I really like Barkley. I really do. He stays healthy. He doesn't have to be the number one guy. It's like, I feel like him and Derrick Henry, like, it's like they have new life. It's like,
yeah, I agree.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like,
and
so,
I think all those numbers on the left side, the passing, the rushing, and the total, I think all of those get better. I really do. And I actually think their defense couldn't be much worse than it was last year. I don't even think they don't need to have they need to be better than 26th, but I think if they're like 19th or 20th, that's good enough for this team to make a run
defensively. Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
what bites them in the butt, in my opinion, is I am not a fan of Nick Sirianni at all, and I think he's made some quantum mistakes for this team. And if this team, it's kind of like McCarthy in a way, except I don't think he's as good as McCarthy. I think if they don't take a giant leap, if they have another kind of floundering season like they had last year, he could be gone.
Oh, I agree. I mean, like I said, there's definitely some internal issues over there, and people are wondering, I mean, what is Sirianni actually a good coach, or did he just have really great assistants who are now head coaches in the league? I mean, that's the talk, and just kind of people inside the building, players maybe not totally trusting or buying in what Sirianni's selling. Obviously, they quit on him. Like last year, by the end, they quit on him. So can you get that back?
Well, let's talk about real quick their odds. If you can't see my screen, if you're listening to the podcast after the fact, over under win total 10.5 at DraftKings, which is half a win better than the Cowboys. So clearly Vegas likes the Eagles to win the division. Again, their division odds -120. They're plus 600 to win the NFC. That's a low number. In the Super Bowl, plus 1,500, so 15-1 to win the Super Bowl. If you look at their schedule, it's they get a break to some extent that they get the second place schedule instead of the first place schedule. But this is a pretty tough start. They play two prime time games to start. Packers on a Friday night. They get to play a Friday night game at home against the Packers. Then they play Atlanta.
No, they're in Brazil.
Brazil. That's right. You're right. That isn't. I forgot to put the neutral site there, but that's right. On a Friday night in Brazil, and then they come home. They get an extra day off. They play on a Monday night at home against the Falcons for their home opener before going on the road at Saints-Bucs. They have some spots in the schedule, I think, a lot softer than what Dallas has. You know, we talked about how tough Dallas's mid-stretch is. Now, I don't like that fifth week is a bye week, but after they play the Bengals on October 27th, you got Jags, Cowboys, fine. Commanders, Rams will be better at Ravens, but you got Panthers, Steelers, Commanders again. Your last three games against the teams of your division. I think this, not to give a spoiler alert, but I think this schedule clearly favors the Eagles over the Cowboys.
If they stumble down the stretch, then Sirianni does need to be fired because
no question. Panthers, Steelers, Commanders, Cowboys, Giants. That's how it ends.
Yes.
They should go 5-0 in that stretch, or at least 4-1. So
at least 4-1.
All right. We'll finish this up with maybe the most interesting team in the division as far as, look, we know what we got from Dallas. We know what we got from Philly. We know what we're going to get from the Giants. I don't know that we know what we're going to get from the Washington Commanders and new coach Dan Quinn and new quarterback Jaden Daniels, who people here would be. Look, I know one thing. You look at these numbers on the right side of the screen of their rankings from last year. They are going to be better than 24th offensively and worst in the league on defense, especially since you hired a defensive coach to come in and change some things. look, I think the Commanders, I'm not saying they're going to go goo-goo gaga over them because I think they're still a year or two away from really competing, but I think they could be a fun team to watch.
Oh, I agree. And I mentioned earlier how Dan Quinn, obviously a defensive guy, brought in some new pieces, brought some guys with him over in Dallas, should make them better. Because like last year, you had some really disappointing numbers. I mean, the whole team, it was a dumpster, the whole team last year.
It was.
But Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen are typically better than what they played like last year. But they brought some help. They even brought in some underrated player, Frankie Louvu. What I forget how to pronounce his name, but he played pretty well for Carolina last year. Brought Bobby Wagner in. Obviously,
right.
Dan Quinn and Bobby Wagner know each other pretty well from their days in Seattle. I don't love their secondary. Like
it's terrible.
An issue. I mean,
Jeremy it's ranked
their
30th.
corners are not good. They're not good. Offensive line's not good, but they did bring Dallas' center. Like they brought him with him too. So they got some question marks at their number 2 receiver spot. I'm curious. Like Dotson is not pulled away for the job. I thought he'd take a step up, and apparently he's not. But like Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, they could become really good friends.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels maybe use Eckler again. Austin Eckler is with the Washington Commanders now. People
rebound season,
and so it's definitely some different pieces to the puzzle there. But obviously, we're all watching Jaden Daniels, and I think he can. I think he can be. I'm not saying he's going to be Stroud, but I think he can be successful early on with this year. And again, I'm going to look at the over/under win total. You're going to pop up the records earlier. I don't remember what I put. I could see them going above 6.5.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I think that look, I'm not trying to be. There are times I get called home. Jaden Daniels is going to be a superstar in this league. That's my opinion. So,
look, there's only going to be 3 starting rookie quarterbacks from this draft class right away. Jaden is one of them. I just think he can make plays that other quarterbacks can't. Like he's different than Caleb Williams. He's different than Bo Nix. Like he is a different kind of cat, man. And I just think like they can get pieces around him. He's a young, that's the thing. You can build around him because he's not a big salary guy. You can, if he plays well, people will come. Just like CJ Stroud, young contract. You can build around him and get good quick if you have the right pieces in place.
All right, it's prediction time. Larry doesn't even know what he predicted.
I don't remember what it was.
He sent me this a month ago. You know what? If you want to give me an updated prediction for the next 3 weeks, that's
I'll just update it as we go on the fly.
All right. Before we get to our predictions, let me tell you a bit more about how Evangeline Securities can help you figure out what your family or privately owned business might be worth and whether it's time to sell. How do they do it? Well, after their complimentary valuation of your company, if you decide to proceed, our native New Orleanian experts, Nick Braden, Ron Hemelt, and the folks at Evangeline will begin an extensive auction process among established private equity funds from around the world. And then they will maximize the return process for the founder and his or her family. You never need to worry about which starters will play at Evangeline in preseason or the regular season or whatever, because it's never preseason for Nick and Ron. Evangeline Securities is also the top producer on their platform, and there are very few companies like them in this area, none with their dedication and success. They are fully licensed, ready to serve you. So get in touch with Nick and Ron about what is really important. Larry and I both know what's really important the rest of our lives. Yours too. You can find them at www.evangelinesecurities.com. Okay, here we go. If we had a drum roll, maybe I need to get a drum roll. And you know what? I don't have a drum roll, but like every now and then someone will ask me for this. What about this? Can you hear it?
I could kind of.
What about that for a drum?
Scuttle around.
All right. I still got that sitting here.
Good.
James says, thanks for the feedback on his Washington Commanders. Well, you're welcome, James. Come back. We're going to this is just the first of, we've got the NFC West next Wednesday. Then we're going to have the NFC North. And I know everybody can't wait for the NFC South, but our NFC East predictions. Larry, you said the Commanders going to go 3-14.
I knew the record was bad. Like, I remember that. I said, man, I'm not going to like that. So I don't really like that record. I think.
Yeah. You're saying here that you think they're going to be a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be better than the Giants.
Yeah, I think they are going to be a little bit better.
You were super stoked about the Philadelphia Eagles at 14-3.
I am. I just think that, like, some of the pieces, like, obviously we know they're good, but something happened culturally, and I mean, I think they can remedy that, because I think the team knows that they're good enough to look. They were number 1 seed for like half the year, and then all of a sudden they went down the toilet. It was crazy. So, like, I really do think that having someone like Saquon Barkley come in, I think he can take some of the heat off that offense. And then defensively, they made some changes, made some different pieces. Maybe someone like Devin White could kind of he's kind of in his own new place. And I think that he's a natural leader. So I think people can get on board with that. I really like Bryce Huff. I really do. He is a younger, better Hassan Reddick. He's an ascending player. I think swapping that out will help matters. And so, look, I'm very high on the Eagles.
Look, I am high on the Eagles as well. And I think they're going to overcome the shortfalls of Nick Sirianni. I do not like him as a coach. And I think that, in a way, I know this is weird if you're an Eagles fan, but in a way, it's almost better if I don't want to say be mediocre. You wouldn't want that, but they flounder a little bit. I think if they had a real coach there, this team could be the best team in the NFL. Like, I truly believe that. Anyway, I think they'll
just about won the Super Bowl with him.
Yeah. And what did they do last year?
They were great for 10 weeks, 11 weeks.
You can't have floundering periods like they had. Anyway, I think look, they have one. I think Jalen Hurts doesn't get enough credit for what he does. I think with Saquon Barkley, their running game is going to be even better. I think that their receiving core, at least their top 2, that might be the top 2 in the league, or certainly one of the top 2 receivers in the league. Dallas, they take a step back. Look, when you can't run the football, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the football. I don't think you can win if you simply can't run the football. We've seen that with the Ravens in the past, that the reason why, and when your only running game is your quarterback, and the Cowboys don't have Lamar Jackson. So you can love Dak all you want, but if they can't find a way to run the football, it's going to be tough. And I think I might be a little low on the Commanders. Maybe that I should have had them at 7-10 and the Giants at 4-13. But I think the Commanders are going to, again, be one of the fun teams to watch. So
yeah, I think there's promise there. There's for sure. Like, but do they have flaws? No question. But I do think that there's promise, and you can build around that. Like, again, people will see Jaden Daniels, and I think he can be excellent. Similar to like CJ Stroud. Now, people are now wanting to go to Houston because they say, all right, we could do something with the Texans. I mean, that's why they got bigger names to get on board there. And so I think that could happen maybe next offseason with Washington.
We all have flaws, Larry Holder. Lord knows
we do.
I do. Lord knows I do. All right, before we go off the air, a couple questions I'll tell you what, one question that we had that I'm going to show here, and then we're going to say bye-bye for the weekend. Rocky wants to know, does Charlie Smythe take the kicking job from Blake Grupe? And I don't know if you even have an answer or an opinion.
No idea.
Yeah, I figured you would have an opinion. My opinion is this, that if they are even, and I actually think that Smith is starting to catch up on Grupe. I think if they're even, I think you got to give it to Smith. He has way more of a ceiling. He kicks the football much further than does Grupe. And look, you got to remember, he just started kicking in American football. So I think that, and I know the reasons why some would go with Grupe is because you can keep Smith on the roster, or he's this international player that you put him on the practice squad and it doesn't cost you a spot there. I just think
neither strike much confidence in me.
No, and it wouldn't surprise me at all either if you see a cut made, and the kicker. It happens with kickers all the time. if a kicker cut is made and the Saints say, you know what, we'll put Smith on the practice squad, we'll cut Groupie and we'll pick up somebody that gets cut. That's also
neither one of them are going to be claimed. I'll just
No.
put it to you that way. They're not going to be claimed in waivers. No.
I'm not a fan of Groupie at all. I'm not being negative towards him. But he missed too many kicks last year, and everything I'm hearing is he's missing kicks in camp too. So Jerry says besides need help on offense. Yeah, well, they're down.
Well, the offense might get in a field goal range, and if the kicker can't kick your points, and then you're losing every week by 3 or 2, I mean, you're toast.
Yep, that's true. All right, we will see you on Wednesday. We'll do the NFC West. It should be a lot of fun. A-Town says, have a great weekend. Go Saints. You know, are you trying to enjoy your last couple weekends before all hell breaks loose?
The fun thing is I at least get to enjoy most of my weekends. Like my work schedule in season, I'm off on Friday and I'm off on Saturday. Like that's a pretty good stretch. And then I'm working like a psycho on Sunday.
You could come be my spotter on Friday nights at prep football games if you want.
I could.
I don't know how much money we'd give you, but you can come be my spotter if you want.
I'm getting $0.00 for this. Why would I expect you to give me any money to spot a football?
Touche, my
Spoiler
friend.
alert. Spoiler alert.
Touche, my friend. All right, that's enough. We've done enough rapping for this day. I'll see you on Wednesday, and everybody else.
Wednesday it is.
Everybody else I will see on Monday. That will wrap it up. I want to thank my friend Larry Holder, of course, Gabe Henderson behind the scenes. Gabe Henderson will be back in front of the camera when we do Mondays with Gabe. That'll be fun. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. Click the little bell. When we go on the air, you will receive notifications. You can find all of our shorts, some stuff with Larry and I, some fun moments. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about him getting squat for doing the Dattitude podcast. You can find us wherever you get your.
Should be on there. Yes,
it definitely should. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and many more. Also, find a replay of the show on NOLA.com/sports and on bet.NOLA.com. Everyone, have a glorious weekend. We will see you on Monday when it's mano y mano. See you then. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.